Hello and welcome to the Monday show on the Everything is Black and White podcast. We're back after a week's break. I'm Andrew Musgrove and today joined by a very special guest in the mirror, Simon Bird. Yes, Aaron Stokes is off. He's had more holidays than Newcastle have had wins this season. He'll be back next week. We didn't have an episode last week. And I'm still trying to work out whether that's a good thing. After a week's reflection, will things look any different? I'll get Simon's view on that. And if you're watching live, please let me know how you're feeling after a week or so on from that Brighton defeat. We'll have a look at the main issues currently hampering Newcastle United start of the season, the future of Bruno Guimarães, the Champions League, and much more. Simon, welcome back to the podcast. How are you keeping?
Thank you. Very good. Thanks. Back after also a week's holiday. Very enjoyable.
You were telling me off air about your holiday. It sounded absolutely perfect.
Yeah, a week of cycling in the French Alps, which wasn't exactly relaxing, but it was good preparation.
How was the weather? Nice? Was it perfect cycling weather?
It was perfect for the last 4 days, but then we had snow and -3 at the top, and also for the first 2 days. So the temperature variation was 40 degrees Celsius.
That's quite
But it was
quite something.
Good.
I'm back after doing the Great North Run. I'm feeling particually chipper today. I was going to ask you. Now we know you do your cycling. Are you gonna join next year? You can do?
Well, I've done the Great North Run twice, but around about 2 hours, 2 hours 10 for my second attempt. So I retired after 2. But you're a regular, aren't you? You were happy with yesterday's run?
This is my 11th one. That was number 11. I was happy to get over the line in one piece. It was far too warm, and I didn't want to end up on the decks. And so I was just concentrating on getting over the line and enjoying it. We ran for the Sir Boy Robson Foundation, over £5,000 raised for a great cause. So that was the main point. And then the heavens opened. I've never seen anything like it. Older listeners and viewers, and I'm sure, Simon, you'll remember Thunder Thursday. Do you remember that?
Thunder Thursday.
10 years,
yes,
10, 12 years ago.
Lightning shots all around Tyneside.
I've not seen weather yesterday after the finish line like that since Thunder Thursday.
Really?
It was horrendous.
Needed to cool off, though.
Well, yes, it would have been helpful if there was rain at the start because it was far too warm. Anyway, we're going to talk about Newcastle United, and we're going to kick off with Simon's take on that defeat to Brighton. It wasn't a great performance, wasn't a great result at all. Brighton thoroughly deserved it. Is it a bad day at the office, or are there deeper issues that need to be ironed out sooner rather than later, do you think?
Probably a bit of both. I think when you watch what the ownership was saying about what they expected from this year on the Amazon documentary, they expected there maybe will be rocky times, and I think that was probably going to be from fatigue and juggling European matches. But obviously, we've not even got into Europe yet, and there's a few problems to iron out. I think Newcastle played similar tactics for a good 18 months now, probably, and maybe teams are working it out a little bit. And I think that individually, you look at how some players dipped athletically and form wise, and there's probably a few who have dipped a little bit. And then there's like the luck factor and the chemistry magic kind of factor, which is kind of harder to pin down. And it's a very hard start to the season. They've had the fixture list isn't exactly ideal just to get yourself off to a nice start. So there's all those factors sort of mixed in there. But I think Eddie Howe will be a little bit concerned about this. I mean, the text I was getting from Newcastle supporting friends expressing a lot of concern that it looked so flat and not pressing, and the energy wasn't there in the second half from a pretty demoralised team.
And I think most of the talk is about that midfield three of Bruno, Tonali, and Joe Linton, and if that doesn't work, regardless of who you're playing, but there was obviously the three that he's sticking with. If that doesn't work, then Newcastle are not going to work as a team, and it really is shining through. That for me, I think for most people watching and listening, that's the main issue. It's just not working. It's not clicking. Yeah. Is it a case of give it time, and in a few weeks' time we will see, it working, or do you think something needs to change before then?
I think he might mix it up. I mean, he had 2 weeks to think about it and 2 weeks on the training ground to actually put things right. And you look at the midfield three, and Bruno is top quality, but probably hasn't really been on 100% top form that Bruno can deliver. And then you look in, one of the biggest issues we were exploring with Eddie Howe in America pre-season was how Tonali is going to be a great player and is clearly a magnificent player, but does he have the same energy and running power that Sean Longstaff does on that right of the three? And Tonali will want to impress a lot more on the ball himself than Sean Longstaff will. So Sean Longstaff did what looked like a very simple job. It's obviously not a simple job, whereby he wins the ball back, he gets up and down, and he says himself, Bruno makes me look brilliant because I just give him the ball. Probably simplifying his role a bit, but I think that kind of played into Bruno's game a little bit more with next to Longstaff, and there was that relationship built over a year and a half. So that when you take Longstaff out of the team and you've got Tonali there looking to be on the ball himself and a bit more impressive, and that kind of disrupts things. It can be worked out. And then on the other side, Joe Linton moved from the attacking front three back to that midfield three. And is he fit? I mean, he's indestructible. He looks indestructible at times, but he didn't look 100% on his brutal kind of enforcing game that we're used to. So when you're looking at it, I think you obviously I don't think you'd drop Bruno. You'd keep him in there. Do you take Tonali out? Can you risk doing that with a big star signing for a game? Or do you tweak things and have him and Bruno as the two? Do you bring Elliot Anderson in on the left-hand side for Joe Linton? I think that's certainly something they might want to do, because when you have Joe Linton as the left winger, that really shores things up from a left wing point of view. And you have Elliot Anderson in there as the midfield three. There'll be a lot of issues that Eddie Howe's trying to work out in the last 2 weeks. And I mean, obviously, they've come through bad patches before, and you'd back him to find some kind of answer that will work against Brentford.
And there's a lot you've mentioned there. My thought this week, though, has been how easy will it be for Eddie Howe to remedy the issues when you have so many players away on international duty, and actually the players who are central to the issue. You've Bruno, Joe Linton away with Brazil, Trippier, the captain, away with England. Now, you obviously want these players to be away with their country. It's great experience. It's great exposure for Newcastle United. But when you've got 2 weeks, and a lot of people have said, this break's come at the right time because Eddie Howe can work on it. Well, can he? I mean, in reality, can he actually? Because the players you're going to try and solve the issue with aren't there.
Yeah, well, two of them aren't. I mean, with Bruno and Tonali, Bruno did very well for Brazil. Didn't misplace a pass, I don't think, and got an assist. He was fantastic for Brazil in the weekend. So, but there is a little bit of precedent here where I think when Eddie Howe is having an international break, he will work on something, and the players who have been away might be the ones to miss out. So you can't obviously you can't leave out Bruno and Tonali, but one of those two might well be taken out. And if he's worked on Sean Longstaff and Elliot Anderson for those two wide positions in the midfield three for 2 weeks, maybe they get the nod against Brentford. And the sugar being, you take Tonali aside and you say, look, your big game is AC Milan in midweek. And you say, I want you up for that. You played twice for Italy. And maybe that's the way of sugaring it with Tonali. So there have been times when people have pulled out of international duty for and then come back to Newcastle and then being played. And there are times when people have been away and there's been a doubt whether there's a slight doubt of whether they'd be picked, and they haven't been because they've been away and Eddie Howe's not had time to coach them for 2 weeks. So I would suspect that they're working on the players who are here and thinking about how to get them in the side. But you can't leave them all the internationals out, obviously.
Yeah, that would create something, wouldn't it? And you mentioned Sean Longstaff there. Jamie Redknapp sparked off a really interesting debate on social media when he was speaking after the Brighton game, and he said, look, Sean Longstaff needs to be back in this side. The statisticians pulled up stats about how influential Longstaff was when he was starting games, and he's still a man that splits opinion. I've seen a lot of people say, well, actually, it's that kind of when a player's not playing week in, week out, they look better in the view of many. Where do you stand? Because I think there's a deeper issue for me. I don't think Newcastle United have got an out-and-out number 6. I think that's where the issue lies. Now, is Sean Longstaff the answer? He might well have to be until January, because I don't think Bruno's got the discipline to be that number 6. I think he's actually hampered. Does Sean Longstaff come in against Brentford?
When you talk about number 6, you talk about a full-on holding role.
Yeah, someone that just
screening
gets at the ankles
and then you give it. I'm sure Sean Longstaff could be. I don't know if that totally fits with the formation, but I'm not a tactical genius. But I do think that when Sean Longstaff's out the team, Newcastle do miss him. And a few years ago, you might not think that. And he's also probably one of those players who needs to be in the team and doing it regularly to be in the groove. So he looks a better team, but then you've spent that money on Tonali, and that was always this is the biggest challenge for Eddie Howe this season, is how how you get the best out of Tonali and Bruno, and when they're both in the team, does it work, or do you have to switch formation and tweak it a little bit to make it work? I mean, the doubts about Tonali when we were asking Eddie Howe repeated questions in pre-season was, has he got the competitiveness, has he got the toughness, and has he got the legs, the intensity for the Premier League, and the way Eddie Howe plays coming from Serie A, which the stats kind of prove that it's probably the slowest of the leagues in the major leagues in Europe, behind Germany and behind Spain and behind the Premier League. So that was always the doubt. Now he seemed to prove that he did have all that toughness and all the legs in the first game. Has he done it since? I don't know. That's for Eddie Howe to decide. So it is a really tough one. But Sean Longstaff is a tough character to leave out of that side, and he looks he looks a more valuable player when he's been left out than he does when people are analysing him when he's in the team.
Yeah, for me, he does come back in, and it's interesting you said that you don't think maybe that number 6 is kind of the formation Eddie Howe's going for. But I've just watching back the Liverpool game, the City game, and the Brighton game, this space between the defence and that midfield three just so alarming. I mean, you could have driven a bus through it. Yeah. And for me, that's where I think Newcastle maybe, I think they had a good transfer window. I think the players they've brought in have been excellent, building for the future, but also, they can play for today. Yeah. But I do think the one area maybe where they've let themselves down, also maybe a centre-back, but for me, is that number 6 now. Yeah. Listeners of the podcast will know, big fan of Tyler Adams. I know if Newcastle signed him, he wouldn't be playing anyway because he's injured, but I just feel they're missing someone who can just sit and just shield the defence when needed, because you watch Bruno and it's his natural instinct just to drift forward. Mm-hmm. That's what he likes to do. But I'm just concerned, and it'll be my biggest concern against Brentford on Saturday as well, that if they can manage to get into that space, they've got dangerous players who will punish Newcastle, as Brighton did last week.
So you're saying that they should have signed an athletic destroyer kind of thing to dominate in front of the defence. Okay, so but you also said that they had a good transfer window. And I think a lot of fans have been questioning that on social media. In spending, you spend 70 million on 2 reserve fullbacks who aren't in the team yet, aren't bolstering aren't strengthening. I mean, they're giving Kieran Trippier a kick up the backside and Dan Burn at left back or Matt Targett left back competition, and they're probably not into the training at Newcastle and the systems yet, and being held back. But you're in the Champions League now. It might be a one-off if they can't get top 4, top 5 this year. Surely you'd probably want to spend that 70 million on an impact player now, or spend 50 million of it now. I know Lewis Hall is on loan, but the money seems to be kind of committed. So was it a good transfer window? I mean, should they not have gone for now impact in the team rather than building for the future?
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I tweeted out I thought they had a good window, and the responses came back pretty much as you've kind of summed up there. Well, have they really? Because I also said, but they needed a number 6, and people said, well, how can they have a good window and not sign a number 6? I think the players they've signed are very good players, and I actually think both of them will be first choice come the start of next season. I know what you're saying. Yeah, right. I know what you're saying now. That's not now. That's next season.
What are you doing with Trippier?
I know, but I just think Livramento might just oust him a lot quicker than people are thinking. That's just my opinion. But yes, I get the point about that kind of impact now. I mean, Harvey Barnes, I think, can fit that narrative. But if we're looking at other positions like a centre back that people are after, a number 6, even a striker to a certain degree, they have, I think, left themselves short.
Have they left themselves overstaffed at left wing as well?
Well,
because
yes.
You've got 2 big money signings in the last 2 windows worth 80 million quid, and you've got Gordon and Bonds for effectively the same position. And I don't see yet the versatility. I can see the versatility in Gordon in terms of you could play in the middle, he could possibly switch to the right, but it's not their best positions. And you've got 80 million committed on the left wing as well. So that also seemed slightly bizarre to me. Why you signed Barnes when you've got Gordon?
Did you think they should have gone for someone on the right?
Someone on the right, or maybe even you sell Miggy to Saudi Arabia or wherever, and you cash that money in and get someone in on the right. So I think with Miggy's lack of finishing prowess, I mean, he works so hard and he's darty round and he's so energetic, but his lack of class, for want of a better word, in front of goal is costing Newcastle. And I think they could have upgraded at that position as well.
Moussa Diaby was one that Newcastle liked, didn't end up going for, and he started the season really well at Aston Villa. So it sounds like, based on what you're saying and what you've seen on social media, that you think they've not maybe done enough in the market.
I mean, I think they've probably spent as much as, I think they probably wanted to spend more, but they haven't been able to. I think they're genuine in what they say about that. But we don't know what's the prices of the players. They might have wanted it to look different, and we don't know what the prices are being asked, or the agents' fees, or clubs who will or won't deal with them. So we don't know what the number one plan was. But I think I think they've done it for the future. I think they have covered themselves very well for the future. For 2-3 years down the line, we'll be seeing the benefits of those two fullbacks, definitely, because Hall looks wonderful on the clips you see, and Livramento, they've kind of watched him for a couple of years, and I've seen him for England under 21s, and he's really good. So they've covered themselves for a couple of years, but we've got to be patient on the transfer front, because there are gaps that need plugging in that squad. Right-sided centre back, for instance. I was in Nice last Sunday and watched Todibo, Jean-Claude Todibo play against I can't remember who it was now. And he was really good. He did a brilliant through ball, long raking pass, 40 yards to set up a goal, and looks really sharp and aggressive. Right-sided centre-back, good upgrade. 30 million was the price, kind of knocking around him, 30, 40 million. So he would have been good. So there are gaps to plug in the squad. I think we've probably got to be patient and can't expect it all to be done at once.
Do you think the fact that they qualified for the Champions League, and it was unexpected, I know if anyone actually genuinely said they would qualify for the Champions League at the start of last season, I won't believe you. Do you think that's caught them off slightly? Because it's interesting when we talk about the transfers and we're talking about quality, we're talking about depth. Things will have to have changed, the strategy, and I'm just wondering whether it was kind of everything came at them, caught them off guard, essentially, to a certain degree.
No, I think qualifying, I don't buy into this thing, well, they've done it too early or they're not quite ready. If you qualify for it, you're ready, and you take the chance. Sport's about surprising people and making the step up and taking your opportunities when you've got them. And Newcastle took that opportunity. And it's going to be worth what the bottom line is. Eel said on the documentary, 50 million, could well be more than that, could be 70, 80 if they go a bit further. So I don't buy the argument that it's come too early. I think you do the games, you have the adventure, everyone gets excited. It can only be something which produces adrenaline and excitement amongst the squad and amongst the fans, and it's actually going to turn out to be a brilliant distraction.
Yeah.
If they can go to Milan and get a win in the draw against Brentford, then it's kind of easing the league, the worries about the league. So I think the Champions League is only a good thing, and it's a great test, and people can step up and get experience in that, because that's definitely needed in the Newcastle squad, European experience. So it's a good thing.
Some comments from our viewers who are watching live. Diaby, Madison, and Zobazai are the three that definitely got away. I mean, all three have started the season brilliantly for their respective clubs, all three on some sort of list for Newcastle. Geordie Tune for Life says, personally, fans need to calm down. It's never as bad as you think, and also never as good as you think. And there was also a comment saying, no one complains about the window until the City game. I suppose, yeah, reactions are always based on results and how well the club are doing. Johnny says, they've had a good window. We need a left back, and Trippier can't play 50 plus games this season. I will ask you in a moment about the left back, because it's another big topic when it comes to Newcastle personnel. But just on that midfield three, Eddie Howe makes a lot about, he doesn't pigeonhole players. There's not really a set position. He's very fluid with how he picks his players. Is that causing issues, do you think? Or, it worked last season, so you just got to kind of back it to work again this season, even if it takes it a little bit longer to get up to the successful levels of the last campaign?
I think Eddie Howe's got new challenges this season on a lot of fronts, and having a bigger squad. Like last year, you could almost pick that team every week, bar one or two little tweaks on the left-hand side. You would know what he was going to do when everyone was fit. And this year, you're juggling players. You're making players unhappy. You had that with Wilson and Isak last year, but this year he's got Barnes and Gordon, and then when Willock gets fit, he's got Joe Linton or Willock, or whether you play them both and leave Gordon and Barnes out. So there are there's a lot of difficult kind of team management decisions. And we spoke to Eddie Howe once on the touchline after the game when St James was empty, and he said it's his job is, it's not just tactical and training them and putting on interesting sessions. It's massively psychological in terms of how you get into players' heads. And the hardest thing is getting in a player's head and keeping them motivated and hungry when you tell them they're not on the team and they're going to be sitting on the bench and then they might not get on and they've got to, we're there at 6 o'clock after a game, and instead of playing in front of 52,000, they're doing strides up and down the pitch, and that's their job for the day. And that must be pretty annoying and miserable for a player. But I think that Newcastle should have enough games to keep everyone happy this year. And it also is about everyone just having to, when you get your chance, you've got to absolutely show that top 4 level quality.
Is there an issue? Because I've seen a lot of people as well state that the kind of the subs that Eddie makes, they're always kind of like for like. So we talk about depth, but have they got the players that can change the game, not in terms of scoring a goal? I mean, that's obviously the change you would want if you're not winning, what have you, but just in terms of being able to change the way the team play, because it's usually Gordon comes off, Barnes comes on, or Wilson comes on for Isak, or vice versa. So do you think that's something they're going to have to look to remedy in the windows to come, where they're bringing in players where the manager Eddie Howe can actually change the game formation wise instead of just doing like for like? So is that a bit unfair, do you think?
I don't know. I think, well, if you're like Eddie Howe and you working at 4-3-3, and that's the preferred one, that's what you've done all your set running on and the patterns of play, it's kind of a bit. I mean, it's a bit desperate if you start if you haven't got another way of playing, if you're just going to like completely throw that formation out the window. Maybe some games you've got to. I mean, that weird game in against Aston Villa in America where they played like a back three, and Matt Targett was almost playing like a left winger, way advanced, and there was holes all over the pitch. Maybe I don't know whether that was an experiment. We didn't get the time to go into detail with Howe about that, but maybe he was trying something new there, a 3-4-3, or there must be something else in his armory that he's thinking about, which one day he'll surprise us with after a bad run, or even after a good run.
Because that's something else, and I keep mentioning the comments that people I've seen over the last couple of weeks on social media, that some have also said, is there a plan B? What is the turn to if this setup isn't working, if Newcastle, as they did against Brighton, just fell off a cliff? What does Eddie Howe have in his pocket which can change the game on its head completely?
Well, I think the biggest armory that we've got is by saying to the front players, you give us your flat out 1 hour performance and give us everything you've got, which is total intensity and sprinting and running. You're not saving yourself to get through a 90-minute game. You're going bang for an hour. And then they've got the strength and depth now to change the entire front three and then give them half an hour battering teams when the defence are getting tired. Usually defenders aren't substituted off in rival teams. And that's where Newcastle's strength has been in the last year or so. And it certainly was against Aston Villa when they were steamrolling them towards the end. So I think that's the biggest change of game weapon they've got. I mean, rugby union, you see they don't call them subs anymore, they call them finishers, and they bring on a new front row, and the new front row's dynamic coming in the last 20 minutes of the game. Maybe Newcastle should call their subs finishers now, and because they can finish off the game. Maybe I think he will have like tactical formations and tweaks that he wants to do. Sometimes when we're writing match reports and filing 600 words at a game, we're not sitting back and we're not like actually spotting these little tweaks that he's making. Is he taking the fullback out and pushing him forward and tucking him in, or whatever he's trying to do? So often and then obviously we ask a manager and he's not going to tell us completely his tactics, is tweaks and tactics. So Eddie Howe's probably thinking if he ever wanted, we wouldn't watch this, but that he has got lots of tactical ideas.
He might be tuning in.
He might be tuning in now for a few ideas. I mean, let's not do ourselves down, Andrew. But I bet he's got a few things in his armory which he could switch to.
Joelinton is a really interesting one for me. Player of the season last year. He's just a totally different beast under Eddie Howe. But for the past few games, Eddie Howe has been quite open and said, look, he's either not trained or he's done light training. He's not been put fully through his paces yet. He's made it into that starting 11. Now, for me, when Joelinton isn't on form, Newcastle don't perform as well. But the fact that he's not training day in, day out and being part of whatever Eddie Howe's doing during the week. That can't be good for him. It can't be good for Newcastle United.
No, you're right. And he's away with Brazil, wasn't he? He came on for Bruno the other day, so he's away, all that travelling again. So he clearly is fit enough to play, but he looks like the kind of guy who gets injured, but just like ignores it and gets on with it, which is a brilliant character trait to have, because no footballer is ever 100% really during the season. However, I would say one prediction that I would give you now is that Elliot Anderson was called up for the Scotland squad, and whether that's him wondering whether to play for Scotland or England or what, I would suggest that's him going. He's not sure about Scotland, yes, but he actually fancied. Maybe Eddie Howe's been in his ear and said, "I need you here training for 2 weeks." I would predict that against Brentford at home, maybe Elliot Anderson gets a run out in that left-hand midfield position. If Joe Linton's getting back on Thursday late, and only has one training session before that game, I reckon Elliot Anderson, who has earned himself a chance through his pre-season performances, might get in there.
What do you reckon? Tonali, Bruno, Anderson?
Well, I've like I said before, I mean, we're playing fancy manager here for Eddie Howe and his coaches, but I think you might just give Tonali a rest and put him on the bench and put Anderson on the left and Sean Longstaff on the right with Bruno. I think Bruno, you go back to last year's thing, and you put the two guys who you've trained with for 2 weeks, tactically, formation-wise, drilling into the heads. You put them in and give them a chance.
We'll wait and see what the team sheet reveals on Saturday, 4:30. It'll be out on 5:30 kickoff, isn't it? Yeah, going to be really interesting. Just on Bruno contract news, it was felt by some that it was near completion months ago. Then it kind of everything went quiet. It's said to be close once again. Liverpool reportedly a late £100 million bid. Do you think he's been distracted by talk of his future?
Yeah, I think when they are. I mean, when a player comes and, I mean, he took a big gamble to come, and he was the one who injected initially in that first ever press conference he did when they were in the relegation zone, and he said, we're going to get to Europe, we're going to get the Champions League, we're going to win some trophies, and we were going, what they sold this guy, Newcastle miles away from that at the moment. He injected that ambition, and then he's done 18 months or a year and a bit of absolutely proving himself world class, top notch, vital to the team. And I think when you've done that on a certain level of contract as a £35 million player, and suddenly people are talking about you as a £100 million player, the reality of football economics is that you think you deserve more. You've been a big cog in them getting to the Champions League and earning 55, whatever it is, million more. And you start thinking, I need a bit more money. It's not greedy. It's just football economics. It's what players expect. So they had to upgrade his contract. I mean, I hope there's a release clause in there of like 130 million or something stupid like that, because you can see Newcastle. Well, first of all, it has been a distraction. You asked this distraction question. It has been because in the summer we interviewed him at an event in New Jersey, outside New York, and we asked the contract question, and he said, "Yeah, well, there is some doubt," and he used himself the word doubt. He wasn't like spoiling to be away or anything like that. He was just saying there's a bit of doubt over his future. So in the back of his mind, he's getting a message out there. So it would be good to get it resolved so that he's happy. He's also got another baby on the way, and he's been the big man at Newcastle for a couple of years now. He's been the big star, huge personality, really infectious. And obviously he's got Tonali's coming probably on more money than him. I mean, and you don't want that if you're Bruno. Players are full of prestige, and they want that. They notice that kind of thing, so he'll want to be on equal money to Tonali, I would have thought. So, but if they do give him a new contract, at some point Newcastle are going to be sellers as well. So if you think you've got 2-3 years the best out of Bruno, and it's time to go, Real Madrid's your dream, or Barcelona's your dream, or Atletico Madrid's your dream, which you can kind of see happening at some point. I mean, even Darren Eales has admitted that there are times when you can't stop a player going because it's their dream club from where they've come from, Brazil. I hope they stick a clause in which gets Newcastle 120 million and they can reinvest it amazingly,
Yeah, I mean,
they'll do that at some point. Like Liverpool have sold Suarez, they've sold various players for 100 million down the end. People complained, but you got to do that.
I think when that day happens, and like you say, it will most likely happen at some point. You can be rest assured that the ownership, the transfer team have a plan. They're not just going to say, right, yeah, we're going to cash in now, or we're going to let him follow his dream without actually having a replacement coming up behind. Because that kind of sounds like the Newcastle of old, doesn't it? But we know this Newcastle will have a contingency plan in place.
Maybe it's Tonali. Maybe Tonali then takes a bigger role as the Pirlo, like
potentially Lewis Miley could come through, and
Lewis
got others,
so there's a production line there.
But that's yes to come. Yes to come yet, hopefully. Really interesting to see when that contract will be announced, if indeed it is nearing completion. Jump back into the comments. Got loads of people tuning in here. Nigel says, so lads, Harvey Barnes 12 goals last term, class. Miggy 12 goals last term, not class.
No, Harvey Barnes is class, isn't he?
He's making the point that he scored the same amount of goals as Miguel Almiron last season.
Right, got you. Sorry, I didn't hear that. Well, Harvey Barnes is a finisher, and I think he's an upgrade finisher on Almiron, who had a hot streak, but then has blazed a few over the bar.
Do you know what? People know this because I am the self-proclaimed founder of the Miguel Almiron fan club here on the podcast.
Are you?
I am, and I think he's had a really unfair press over the start of this season. Against Liverpool, I felt he was the most threatening player on the pitch. I know everyone will say Gordon, but I think in terms of shots on goal and actually threatening the goal, Miggy was an inch away from scoring one of the best goals you'll ever see since James. Part of that save from Alisson was unbelievable, and the run as well, smashes off the post. Such fine margins. Everyone will say it's always fine margins, but I do think if you take him out of the side, you will notice it. You will notice a difference defensively, and people say, "Well, you're not going to notice a difference attacking because he doesn't score goals." But I think he'll start scoring again soon. I do think defensively, though, he adds a heck of a lot to that team.
Okay, yeah, I mean, look, he's great, and the problem is with Miggy, we've not heard his story. He doesn't he must speak English, but we don't understand him as a player, like journalistically, because he just doesn't speak. He doesn't do interviews. He doesn't come out. The other players you're looking in several times, we've looked him in the eye and we've asked them questions and we've heard their personal stories, and that's been great, and it's great for the fans to hear that. But maybe Miggy needs to come out a bit and actually tell us about himself and
explain to listeners. And what difference do you think that would make if he was a bit more open and he did a few more interviews and told his story?
Yeah, well, I think it would tell us what his ambitions are and what his strengths and weaknesses are, where he's coming from as a person, how he what he thinks about Newcastle and his life here. And I think that all builds up a picture in your mind. Well, I'm maybe sitting here, you're not being critical, I'm being a bit critical of him or doubting him. I think that might, I think looking someone in the eye, asking questions and hearing them speak kind of, it shows you a lot about their character and where they're coming from and what kind of personality they are.
I guess wanting to know whether he sees the negativity and how he reacts to that is kind of maybe one of the key elements. Because you're right, we do speak to players and we say, well, how do you react to this or that? Or even Eddie Howe in recent weeks when people have said, well, why did you take Tonali off? And he's fronted up to that criticism. And I suppose understand how players, managers react to criticism is maybe one way.
Yeah. I know. Okay, we could ask him then. What you're finishing, is it suspect, or is it? Are you converting as many chances as you want to, and how you're working on that, and have you done extra training on it? And just asking those difficult questions of a player, and then hearing their honest answers and how it's tormenting them or they're putting extra work in. It kind of gives you. It just softens the whole criticism a little bit and makes you understand where they're coming from and that they know that it's if you admit your weaknesses and you're working on them, fair enough. We understand that and you're working on them, and everyone can go away thinking he knows it.
Yeah. It would be interesting to get an insight from Miggy. Geordie Tune for Life says a lot of games coming up and everyone who deserves a chance will play. Bruno Guimarães asks, what about going for a midfield of Bruno, Joelinton and Isak with Barnes, Wilson and Gordon up front? So, I mean, that...
But Bruno, Joelinton and Isak on the right?
Yeah.
As a midfield?
Yeah,
I think you need Isak just doing his thing and tricking defenders.
But, I mean, Isak... Wilson debate's another one that's come up. Obviously, Wilson scored a really nice goal against Brighton, but Isak has had the nod. Some people calling for Wilson to be reinstated. I don't think we're going to see both them in a starting 11 for Newcastle. I can't see it happening. I think it'll be one or the other. Yeah. Would you reinstate Callum Wilson against Brentford? I know what you might is, well, Isak's way with international with Sweden, so more likely. But longer term,
well, yeah, I can see them playing together because I think Isak's a big danger off the left as well. But then Newcastle got 2 specialist left wingers that cost them 80 million. So that thing, if Isak could play on the right, I don't know if he can. It's probably not his best side. Maybe he could, but that kind of the signings they've made have like kind of negated the need to use Isak off the left, which we saw at Everton was one of his amazing positions. So will we see him ever on the left now? They've got Gordon and Barnes on the left, so it's kind of a bit weird that whole over strengthening of the attacking left side.
I mean, Isak on the right. I should have vetted you before I allowed you on the podcast. You're really determined to get Miggy out of the starting 11.
Oh, sorry, it's your favourite player.
I just can't see them start. I think if they'd brought a third striker in, then maybe. I just think it's a massive risk because they're both really excellent players. But how much can you back Callum Wilson to make it through the season if he's starting week in, week out? And I just think Isak is very useful on the left, but I think sometimes he's not as dangerous on the left. And I think when you see him up front, he tends to drift out a little bit wide and then run in. But if you kind of pigeonhole him out on the left, I think it becomes less effective. I can see Wilson though starting on Saturday.
Possibly, but he's also away with England, and I mean he's missed training. He didn't take part in one of the early English training sessions because of workload or game management load or physical load. So there clearly is he's not turning up for England and doing all the sprints and doing all the stuff. He needs to rest his body. So there's still that little question mark. I love Callum Wilson, but there's still a little question mark about his robustness in terms of getting injuries. So I think Isak will be up front, and then you bring Wilson on either as well as Isak or instead of for the last 20 minutes.
Hopefully Newcastle will be well ahead by then. Geordie Tune for Life says formations are changing mid-game. Fans just think we play 4-3-3 and that's it. But if you watch the game carefully, we do change systems. And we have Geordie Tune for Life also saying that he's big fan of Joe Linton, but he's been poor in the majority of games, which is, I just don't think he's been fully fit. And I think that goes into that question about what we're asking. Like, it can't be good if he's not training week in, week out, then to expect him to play 90 minutes. And maybe he does need to be taken out just until he builds up his fitness. We've got Johnny saying Isak, I think, went 9 games without a goal or assist from left wing. So not a fan of playing him out on the flank there. Longstaff needs to be in to mop up, says Andy. That's what we are missing. I mean, the big Isak Wilson debate is raging. Isak is just class, says Philip, but till we get a midfield that is willing to burst forward and fill the gap centrally when he pulls out wide, it has to be Wilson for him. How many times have we seen Isak pull defenders out of position and nobody busting a gut to get in onto the crosses into the box? I guess that's where Joe Willock maybe comes into play.
Yeah, the legs of Joe Willock getting forward and being able to score a goal and do a dangerous pass. Yeah, you need those people breaking from midfield. I mean, Tonali did it for his goal in that first game against Villa. He got into the box, and you need, if they are going to pull out wide at the centre half, you need someone coming through the middle as well. Bruno, but he tends not to get in the box, doesn't he? He tends to hang around the edge of the box and look for the clever ball.
How much of an issue has it been, do you think, that the fact that Willock, he's had another setback? We know he was really instrumental last season to Newcastle's success. Obviously picked up that hamstring injury, wasn't it, against Brighton?
Big hamstring injury. I mean, he was really struggling to walk upstairs after that game. So
I mean, he's obviously a big part of Eddie Howe's plans. I mean, we do need to see more goals from him. He didn't score enough goals last season. And I was hoping this season he'd start and he'd set the world alight, but obviously he's been knocked back by this injury. And even, getting back into full training, what we're thinking, maybe a few weeks, a month, perhaps.
It looks like he's going to be, end of what is it now? September the 10th, maybe the end of October.
So the knock-on effect of that is, when are you going to see Joe Willock fully fit? Because for the way he plays, it sounds daft to say, but he has to be near enough to 100% because he, like we say, he sprints at the box, he's fast, he's quick. that hamstring can pop at any time if you're not. I mean, we could be looking at maybe the turn of the year before we're seeing a fully fit and ready to go.
Yeah,
Joe
which is a pity. But this is when, like, the number of games you've got, and Newcastle want to challenge on every front. You've got the Carabao Cup where you can say to these players, look, you're targeting that game, I want you 100%. This is your chance to prove yourself and get back to fitness or get a game. So we're going to have to, I think we'll see a rejigged team in the Carabao Cup of people who haven't had games in the Premier League and in Europe, or just bits and bobs.
I think some people, without sounding negative, might say, well, if you're aiming for the Carabao Cup for Joe Willock, you might not get that chance because, of course, Newcastle play Man City. But I'm going to offer a bit of positivity and saying Newcastle are going to beat City.
Man City will be doing the same in that competition. They're not going to be playing their 100% first team. There'll be kids involved and fringe players. Still pretty good, though.
Yes, still, just to say the least. Lewis Hall, then, obviously, on loan. We know if everything goes to plan, he'll be signed permanently next summer. His versatility seems to be really key. Something that Eddie Howe has really liked. People have been talking about him potentially playing as that number 6 in some instances, but we think he's coming in as that left back. A lot of people have already called for him to be ahead of Dan Burn. How do you see the next few weeks going? Is Brentford too soon for Lewis Hall?
Not necessarily. If Botman's out, was everyone happy with Matt Targett's performance at Brighton? I'm not sure. Dan Burn moving into the centre back position. I mean, I think Howe likes to work with players for a while before and really get them up to fitness before he throws them in. I think that it would take for an 18-year-old to be strong enough and robust enough, or seen as physically good enough to go straight into that team. I don't know. I think that's probably unlikely, and he'd probably go with the experience of Target. But in a month's time, that might be very different, and he could be pushing Burn and certainly Target for that left back position.
The issue with Target for me is that obviously he's had his injury issues, and then even when he was fit, he couldn't get the better of Dan Burn, who's traditionally a centre back, and just when you look at him, he should not be playing left back, but somehow just manages always to come through. You then got Newcastle signing a youngster coming in who can play left back. Matt Target must just be thinking, well, we're there. I've left Aston Villa because I couldn't get first team football. I've come here. I can't get in the team ahead of a centre back at left back, and now they've gone out and signed someone for big money. Yeah. Inevitably, they're going to end up playing him. He's a quality player as well. Do you think, because you watched him against Liverpool, he got a lot of stick for one of the goals when Salah passed through to Nunez, and again against Brighton, he looked all I would say at some points. Yeah. Do you think his mind's affected a little bit by what he's seen off the pitch?
Yeah, and I think towards the end of last year, did he have a shin problem where he couldn't do like the physical work? And I think when he saw him on the pitch and saw him doing the running afterwards, and that really, you could tell he wasn't like 100% in terms of the running power that you need from a left back. I don't know. I think he's one of those players who's done a great job for Newcastle. Then he was re-signed as a backup because they weren't going to commit a load of money last summer to more than a year ago for a expensive left back. And I think he's, I don't know, it's really harsh to say, but he's probably one of those players who'll gradually get eased out or sold on eventually from the squad when Hall has kind of proved himself, and you've still got Dan Burn in there as cover. And yeah, I mean, he's got to hang in there and get fully fit. And he's playing against Brentford he's got a great chance against Brentford on Saturday to prove everyone wrong again.
Fingers crossed he can take that chance. It's interesting that we're talking about Lewis Hall left back. I mean, a lot of it maybe rests on the fitness of Sven Botman. I mean, he looks like an absolute bargain for the amount of money Newcastle United paid for him. The first question is, how do you think Burn did be moved back into the centre? Because I think the worry is, from a lot of people, it just lacks pace. If you've got Burn, you've got Fabian Schär, it's just lacking pace. Brentford have got some pacey players about them. That is a slight concern, I think, if it is Burn and Schär on Saturday.
Yeah, and Newcastle, I mean, they kind of like to play like a high line and just trust themselves and be on top of teams and winning the ball back high up rather than having to give ground because of a lack of pace at the back. I don't know. I still back Dan Burn. I think he's a great character to be in the team. It's a different position completely. I mean, obviously he doesn't add as much as Sven Botman. Botman's diagonal passes when he was spraying those around to switch in play are amazing. You go with Dan Burn if Botman's not there. He's the stand-in left side centre half.
What is the feeling with Botman? Do we think Saturday will come too soon?
I don't know. I've only been back work 2 days. Andrew, can you give us a chance?
Well, he's been working hard. He's been on his Instagram posting videos of him in the gym and stuff. So he's getting back.
Right. So
he's been on the treadmill.
We're kind of hopeful.
Yeah.
He's running.
He's running. Well, he was on a bike. He was on a bike.
You see,
exercise
there's
bike.
a grading of comeback from injury. So
there's a difference.
You're in the gym doing a few weights on your upper body. You're still out. You're on the bike. Well, you're still a bit knackered.
Well, that was last week.
That was last week. I mean, the test is he on the grass? Yeah. Is he running around the perimeter of the pitches yet with the visuals?
Well, we'll have to wait
That's what we need to see
for Serena to upload the training pics and see if Botman is indeed out training, because Newcastle just a totally different outfit with him in. He's just unbelievable. And what a signing he has been. And then I suppose just looking at the rest of the likely team, obviously Trippier away, you can't see any, I don't think, massive changes against Brentford, can you, other than maybe in that midfield?
I think the midfield he'll change up. I mean, will he give Murphy a run out? I mean, I'm sacking off Miggy again here, but Murphy might be impatient for a little try at right wing. I mean, Longstaff in and Elliot Anderson, like I said, for the midfield three, and then the defence. If Botman comes back, Dan Burn.
But it just feels like a lot of changes for an Eddie Howe side.
Do you think?
Just doesn't, when we're talking about it, it just doesn't feel like an Eddie Howe kind of thing. I know the international break and duty will play a part in that.
But the Champions League coming.
That is true.
So give them that carrot. Whoever you leave out, give the carrot of the Champions League.
On that, how do you think Eddie Howe, Jason Tyndall, and the rest of the staff will be handling that challenge? The Champions League is just it's totally new to them.
It's new, but it's still. I mean, it's interesting. It's probably, I mean, all the video analysis that they do of the Premier League sides, it's probably kind of refreshing for them. It's probably switching their brains on a bit more, that they're looking at the Italian league and they're seeing new players and seeing how AC Milan play. And I think they'll find areas where Newcastle can do really well against Inter Milan. I mean, there was this watching when I was on holiday, watching the draw come in, and there was like a massive split between Newcastle fans of like, oh my God, that's a disaster. We've got no chance. And people going, oh, brilliant. This is why we're in the Champions League. We want to play three completely top quality teams and who have got big followings and a bit of a history. I was in the camp of, this is brilliant. This is why you're in the Champions League.
Too.
I'm going to go play young boys and all the fringy sides in the Champions League. I want the best. Paris and Milan, you couldn't ask for any better than that. So I think it'll be like a massive stimulation to the coaching staff to watch different teams and work out different systems, and actually a confidence builder in that there are elements of a powerful Premier League side like Newcastle that could really do some damage against even Champions League semi-finalists from last year, AC Milan.
Yeah,
I think there's elements there which they can work on.
It's a brilliant draw. I've got written down on my notes here, welcome group of death, because I think it's just absolutely brilliant. You're going to want to play the very best. Now, I'll ask you a few more questions on the Champions League in a moment. Just dive back into the comments. Andy's saying we do need Botman back. Now, Ian has said we haven't even seen the new players yet, and he says it's really frustrating to see all this negativity, which I will say, I don't think it's necessarily negativity. It's just analysing the clear issues that are there at the moment, which I fully back anyhow to remedy, but you can't not pretend they're not there, because you can have your head in the sand, because they've been so evident in the opening games of the season.
On that point, I'm quite pleased that Newcastle fans are. I mean, for me, it all got a bit happy clappy and nothing could go wrong, and we're great, and isn't this wonderful, and Newcastle are going to win the league, and we're naturally going to get to like cup finals every year. And like, it's been last 3 games have been a bit of a reality check, and everyone's thought, yeah, they're not quite there yet. And I think the analysis and intelligent analysis that fans are doing, picking apart the squad, and it's not negativity and it's not treachery to do that. It's just normal fandom, and we're doing it, and it's a talking point, and it's what football is. And in a one club city around the pubs where everybody's interested in how the team are doing. No one's like irrationally condemning players or shouting Eddie Howe out, you're useless, and this throw everything out with,
And I don't think Eddie Howe would want to bury his head in the sand either. He'll have spent the last 2 weeks trying to analyse and trying to work out why it has gone so wrong. Because the performance against Brighton, let's forget about the other time you would have been angry at the way the Liverpool game went, but specifically the performance against Brighton, it would have come maybe as a bit of it would have come as a surprise to him. He would have been nothing shell shocked in the hours afterwards, just thinking how did we perform so badly after a week of so much hard work, after a week of watching Brighton get thumped by West Ham. Both clubs came into that game on bad results really, and one club obviously ran away with it. So I think Eddie Howe will be, welcome them criticism, welcome them the chance to kind of fix the issue.
Oh, totally. And like if fans are disappointed and showing disappointment, and we are, the media are, damn, the lost 3 games, but you're dealing with like 25 ultra professionals here, and it's a manager who doesn't sleep and is tormented by every loss. And if the fans are disappointment, times that by 1,000 for the way it feels to be Eddie Howe and his staff and his players, because they're feeling it more than anyone. It's not like a group of players. Sometimes you have a little disconnect and you think the players don't care, or the manager's not really into it, and he's not looking for all the answers. Like, at least Newcastle fans now know they've got an ultra professional operation with ambition, who are searching and debating for every answer that they can find. It's you can trust the club in that sense now.
Yeah, 100%. Johnny says we can't judge our business on 4 games against tough opposition when they've had barely a chance to integrate into the team. We can see how long it takes players to settle, and I think that's kind of the point of many. Just give the players a bit of time. And like I say, I'm fully backing anyhow to turn this little blip around. We've got Johnny again saying I'm tempted to give Lascelles a go at the back 4 of Bottom's missing. Some pace and physicality, which I don't think he's ever let the club down last season when he did come in against Liverpool, Man City. I think he can clearly still do a job. But yes, the Champions League, very, very, just a fantastic group. Tell our listeners and viewers some of the tales of covering Newcastle in the Champions League.
Oh, I mean, that was 20 years ago, and I'm now one of the oldest ones in the press bag who. I just started the job here on the Mirror when Newcastle signed Bellamy and Robert, got Shearer fit again, and then qualified. And I was at Milan when they played Inter in the, I can't remember, there was 2 group stages in that year.
Yeah.
So it was a bit weird. They had to qualify for a start and went to Sarajevo, and they beat Željezničar very narrowly, maybe 1-0. Titus Bramble was playing his first game. And they had a great side there with Robert and Dyer and Speed and Solano and Shearer and Bellamy, and it was a cracking outfit, and there were wonderful trips. I mean, Juventus, Turin. We did. I've actually done a little series for the Mirror on some of the personal memories of that campaign, because there were some funny stories, and all European trips threw up some daft stories. It was just a massive privilege. Those days, we actually flew on the same flight as the players, so that was a unique experience. And one of the embarrassing things was if they'd lost, because Newcastle lost their first 3 games in the Champions League last time, and then won the next 3 and qualified for the second group stage. And when we'd given them all 4s and 5s, having lost one of those away games, and then we were sat at the back of the plane. And then someone would bring on a bundle of free newspapers, and it was for instance, it would be the Daily Express, and it was Niall Hickman, they're all getting your paper. What did you give them? And you could see the players thumbing through the merit marks, going,
because they care, don't they?
They do care about the merit marks, yeah. And then you would, there was the, Bellamy was always dead sparky and spiky, and if you'd written something about him, because obviously there's a few controversies which he was involved in. And you'd have to walk onto the plane past all the players, and Bellamy would pull you, Simon, why are you a journalist? And you'd I don't want to have this out now in front of the entire squad, Craig. Can we speak about this later? So there was funny elements like that, and then there was a fight in the airport once between John Carver and Bellamy.
Well aware of that one, yeah.
Rumbles. We're having a press conference with Bobby Robson, and there's rumbles in behind this flimsy screen, and we're thinking, what's going on there? That's all a bit weird. Obviously, it came out later that there'd been a chair thrown that just missed Gary Speed, and there'd been wrestling on the floor. So there was all sorts of daft confrontational stuff, but also just the excitement of seeing Newcastle play in a foreign land, in a new, players who were. There was a bit more mystery about it 20 years ago, because it wasn't like the blanket coverage that there is now in Football Manager, where everyone under 30 knows every player in Europe and has an opinion on them. there was a lot more difference in styles between teams then as well. There was a continental patient style probably, and Newcastle's kind of energetic style then. But just seeing fans happy and abroad and singing the Daft songs in Milan. Have you ever seen a Mackem in Milan? And just weird places you'd visit, Moscow, Kharkiv with Alan Pardew. They're the kind of memories which are missed for 10 years when it all, apart from the UEFA Cup season.
Well, I mean, you couldn't have picked three better cities to get to this time around. I mean, Paris, Dortmund, and Milan. I mean, it's going to be something special to see all the fans in Milan. I'm sure the song you've just mentioned there will get an airing once or twice. You mentioned there the experience of Alan Shearer, Gary Speed. I think one of my big concerns about this Newcastle United squad is the lack of experience. And I know people say, well, you've got Tonali, he's done quite a lot for the 23-year-old. You've got Kieran Trippier as well. But I think overall, I do think they miss experience in the Champions League. Again, it's a total different ballgame to anything that most of these players have been involved in.
No, it is totally. And even going back like that 20 years ago when Bobby got them there, he one press conference, he brought the stats out and he said, well, look at us. We've got like 6 appearances in the Champions League in my entire squad. And Gary Neville is playing for Man U in another match tomorrow. And he's got 54 games in the Champions League and someone's got 50 odd. So he was pointing out even then that Newcastle squad, and that didn't have the experience. And that's like the importance of to be able to deal with these kind of adventures. They can all be new and they could do well and get through and get to the quarterfinals. But to do it year after year is the real test. To get the Champions League's money coming in and your coefficient, which gets you more money naturally from UEFA, and gets you a better feeding in the pot draw. That all spirals to make you like an established Champions League club. And maybe if it goes to top 5 this year, which you could do if English clubs do well, maybe Newcastle can get back in there. Can they get top 4? It's like a real big ask again, isn't it? Jeez. But that's the experience they need. You know, the buy players who've got the experience where you get it yourself by being in there year after year.
Yeah, but just to be there and talking about facing PSG, I mean, it's still. I don't think it still sounds real to most fans, but it's
Mbappe at St James's Park. It's just an exciting experience.
It is, and do you know what? It's really funny because the 3 teams that they've drawn against each have their little kind of side stories with Newcastle. Obviously, the PSG, and you've got the kind of the comparisons with the ownership. You've then got Dortmund in the Battle of the Flags, which is going to be fantastic, and then Milan, you know, Tonali going back home. Which, you know, one of those would have been perfect for the headlines, but you've got 3. You know, it's going to be fantastic. Let alone the football on the pitch. We've got a question here from Joy Tune for Life. Says, what about Nick Pope's form? Great shot stopper, but this season he doesn't look the same, and kicking is dreadful. At fault against Brighton for one of the goals. What do you think? I mean, obviously he's a very, very good goalkeeper. He earned Newcastle so many points last season. I don't think anyone's calling for a replacement at all. No. Just a bad start of the season.
Yeah, I mean the fumble he did against Brighton, wasn't it? The games merged into one. That wasn't great, and he'll be kicking himself and punishing himself about that. But yeah, one of the doubts that I think in England, the England level, is he's probably as good as Jordan Pickford at shot stopping, if not better. But Pickford's in there because of his ability on the ground and his ability to ping a 40-yard diagonal or out of his hands, drill it out of his hands. Probably better than Pope, and I think Southgate knows that. I think he might have spoken about that in the past to the England reporters. So, but Pope, we at the premiere of the documentary, we spoke to Pope and said, "Are you working on being a sweeper keeper? And is that one of the things you've improved on?" And I think that was one of the things that Karius in the summer said that he'd seen Nicky Pope working on and becoming much better at. And we're probably not seeing it yet this year, but it's one of those things that a keeper has a couple of bad games and looks wobbly, but he'll save them loads of time this year. He's just totally top class person and goalkeeper, and it's just like one of those things which is another little cog which has been looked weaker in the team than last year. But there's no way Nicky Pope's not going to be the number 1 goalkeeper for the entire season, and we'll get much better.
Yeah, 100%. we will end the show on some trivia, as we do on the Monday show.
Okay.
But first, before we do that, just tell our listeners what it's like to cover Newcastle on a national scale, because I know a lot of our listeners will feel Newcastle do get a bad press of it. What is it like to be within that kind of circle of covering the club?
No, I mean, I would have thought the national guys are all, myself, we're all kind of local. We all care about the club. We want to do an honest job. We want to speak to people from the club and get stories correct and and do our analysis fairly. So there's not like, there's always this thing about, you're the London press, right? Well, we're not the London press. We work for an organisation which is based in London, but we're all from up here and care about North East football. And have done it. Most of us have done it for a good number of years. So, we have different demands to the U Chronicle guys. We're kind of looking at big picture stuff and probably not as many individual hits on a daily basis as you guys have got to do. I also cover Sunderland and Middlesbrough regularly as well. I mean, every other week I go to Sunderland home games. So we're looking at the whole North East picture as well, rather than being a dedicated club reporter. But I think you'll find that everyone's got Newcastle at heart and wants, more people are going to read our stuff if Newcastle are doing well. And I don't think you'll find. I think you could point to things in decades ago where it was unfair, where managers were treated a little bit more harshly by the national press and were given a roasting, probably a little bit too much. I don't think from my own generation, but that doesn't happen now. And I think because we're very accountable now, I think, there's social media, there's podcasts and people can immediately email us questions. And if you're saying something stupid and deliberately provocative and just out of context without any fairness, then people are going to pull you up and say, you're talking absolute rubbish. So we try and talk sense and we try and give a fair reflection and views on what's going. And there's a national audience, and a lot of the audience for Newcastle stuff on the Mirror will be based in Newcastle, but be Liverpool fans reading it as well. So you can't do it in a parochial way. But thankfully, Newcastle have got a lot of big stars, and we'll have more and more big stars through the years, which more and more people nationally will want to read about.
Yeah, most certainly. Right, it's time to end up on the trivia. So Newcastle United crashed out of the Champions League qualifying to Partizan Belgrade. Do you remember that one?
I do.
On penalties. Oh, so therefore you should do all right on this one. Can you name the starting 11?
Oh my God! For the home game?
For the one they lost on penalties. Yeah,
the one they lost on penalty. Well, Shearer was playing because he missed a penalty.
Yeah.
Was Bellamy playing?
Bellamy wasn't playing.
He must have been injured. I would say, was Shea Given in goal?
Given was in goal.
Right. Was Aaron Hughes playing at right back?
He was.
Was Jonathan Woodgate playing?
Indeed.
Who was playing? Bramble or Andy O'Brien?
Who are you going to go for?
I'll go for Bramble because it's early in the season.
Andy O'Brien.
Okay. Left back was Olivier Bernard.
It was. Look at this.
I would say Solano was probably playing on the right of midfield.
For an extra point, can you name who he came off the bench or who came off the pitch for? Who replaced him?
Who replaced Solano? Oh my word!
106 minutes was the substitute. You can tell me I've done my research.
Oh, was it something like Martin Britton or?
It was Loire.
No. Oh yeah, he did well in the Champions League. Him and Shaw led the line in Leverkusen the year before and scored.
So you've got
Gary Speed in the middle.
Gary Speed. Yeah,
was Kieran Dyer playing in the middle?
He was.
Left wing, Lauren Robert.
No,
left wing would
a man who could have been so much better than he actually was. He was,
was he a left winger?
Left winger. Yeah. He was signed. He was signed as the big youngster who was going to make it.
Was he?
And he failed. It would have been that summer. Yeah, I think he scored his first goal. I remember against Birmingham. I think might be wrong.
As a left winger, as a star left winger to replace Robert.
He was signed. Was he 19, 20 maybe?
Oh my word!
From Portugal.
Oh, Hugo Viana.
Yeah.
Nice. He was really nice.
Robert came on 85 minutes.
Robert came on 85. So Bobby was like kind of looking to retain the ball a bit more than having Robert.
And then the final one up front with Alan Shearer.
Up front was probably Shola.
It was. There you go. Aaron, if you're watching or listening, Simon can come on every week because he's done much better than you have ever done in Trivia Corner.
And who missed the penalties? Aaron Hughes and Shearer.
I'll take it. Do you know what?
I think Shearer missed one, but also Aaron Hughes might have missed one as well. That was a devastating night. Trips in the Champions League just evaporated in front of us in a penalty shootout. But they did well in the UEFA Cup that year, semi-final. They bounced back.
Drogba destroyed them in the
Drogba
semis.
destroyed them. I've written about that for the Mirror website later in the week. Drogba destroyed them in the semi-final and came into the press room with his bottle of man of the match champagne. We were sitting there working on laptops, and he sprayed us. He absolutely soaked us, going with us, which went down really well. Then he moved to Chelsea, which made him even worse in the bad books.
I remember. I do know that semi-final. Just think, wow, what a player that guy is. And obviously comes to the Premier League and confirms what we all thought about him. Simon, thank you very much for popping on to Everything is Black and White podcast. A pleasure as always. To you guys watching, listen, please hit subscribe or follow via whichever platform you are tuning in on. And head over to chroniclelive.co.uk where you can keep up to date with all the latest Newcastle United news, including Eddie Howe's press conference later this week and live coverage of Newcastle's game against Brentford on Saturday. From myself, I'll see you very soon.